The sky was on fire, not metaphorically, not poetically. The sky above Enoch 9, humanity's farthest colony in the Cygnus Drift, burned in silent crimson arcs, ion trails left by bombardment shells still bleeding heat across the upper atmosphere. The once transparent biodome shielding the capital, Varela City, had shattered into jagged teeth, each fragment catching the light of twin suns like glass daggers. Beneath the ruin, silence reigned. Governor Leanne Vox's final transmission looped endlessly over the emergency beacons. "This is Governor Vox of Enoch 9. We are under attack. This is not a drill. I repeat." Static swallowed her voice. A child's shoe floated gently through 0G inside a ruptured school chamber, twirling near the limp figure of its owner. Buildings lay cracked and folded inward like crushed paper. Hydro farms spilled glowing nutrient gel down into smoking sinkholes. Every screen that remained intact blinked red. Colony status, terminal. High above, in the dead orbit where satellites had once spun, now drifted wreckage, twisted metal, solar arrays ripped from moorings, spinning like leaves in a black wind. The assault had lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes to erase a city of 200,000. No warning. No transmission. No demands. Just shadows from slip space, shapes that blotted out the stars, and then obliteration. The first rescue ship arrived 6 hours too late. It coasted in slow, shields still hot from an emergency burn, and found only the dead and the nearly dead. Fires clung to oxygenless wreckage like they refused to admit it was over. Inside a shattered transit tunnel, deep beneath what used to be the planetary command dome, Lieutenant Rhea Mallon moved with her boots crunching. Glass, rifle lit with green glow strips. Her squad fanned out in silence. No one spoke. There was no need. The horror around them screamed loud enough. Mallon paused by a cluster of survivors, maybe a dozen, mostly children. Some adults, burned, dazed, too shocked to weep. A boy clutched a makeshift toy, a jagged circuit board wrapped in cloth. His eyes didn't blink. "Who did this?" Someone whispered into the comms. Mallon's throat was dry. "We don't know yet." But she was lying. They had a name, a theory, a nightmare. Jarkal, a species older than humanity's solar nav, charts, technologically superior, and until now, disinterested. For a century, humanity had expanded outward under the unspoken assumption that while not the biggest fish in the galactic sea, they were too far from the deep to be noticed. Now, that illusion had burned to ash with Enoch 9. The children were extracted. The survivors stabilized. Lieutenant Mallon gave her report to High Command from orbit. 3 hours from the first impact to full collapse. Power systems disabled remotely. Comms jammed. Targeted strikes to critical infrastructure followed by plasma rain. Then they left. No looting, no transmission, no mercy. We weren't invaded. We were deleted. Across Earth, Luna, and Mars, the footage hit the networks. Billions watched in silence as orbital shots of the devastation played on loop. Smoldering domes, glowing craters, a child reaching out to a rescuer with a hand still trembling from shock. Humanity didn't rage. Not yet. First, they remembered. The arrogance of believing they were safe. The comfort of distance. The assumption that time was on their side. Then came the question burning through every conversation, command briefing, and quiet home. If they could do this to one colony, what stops them from doing it to Earth next? And somewhere deep in Martian. Command bunkers under the surface of Luna's black site AI labs, and aboard dreadnoughts drifting on the edge of Terran space. Humanity began to prepare, because for the first time in 100 years, they were at war. The last time Earth had activated Protocol Aegis, it was to end the Martian uprising. This time, it was for something far worse. From orbit, Earth didn't look like a planet preparing for war. But listen to the right frequencies, and you'd hear the truth. Emergency carrier tones screamed across military bands. Civilian traffic was rerouted from deep space lanes. Black site factories blinked to life beneath lunar soil. The silence after Enoch's fall had lasted 12 hours. Then came the signal, a single word: mobilize. On Mars, beneath the scarlet horizon of Olympus Mons, the red forge roared awake. Mag-rail cranes the size of city blocks moved like clockwork gods, assembling ship frames in orbit. Factory cities pumped superheated alloy into molds shaped like destroyers. AI-augmented welders swarmed scaffolds like silver spiders, their joints glowing blue with nuclear heat. Above, the sky shimmered as half-finished warships floated like suspended swords. They weren't building a fleet. They were birthing a reckoning. In one of those orbiting hangars stood Captain Riker Hales, framed against the skeletal spine of a warship still being armored. He didn't wear medals. His uniform was matte black, stitched with red seams of service tags. His face was hard angles and dark stubble, his left eye replaced by a burnished optic that ticked faintly as it zoomed in on a carrier hull. He'd seen colony massacres before, back when Earth turned on its own during the rebellions. But Enoch? Enoch chilled even his blood. "Sir," came the voice of Ensign Laru from behind. "High Command just confirmed. You're reactivated. Command of the Valkyrie strike group is yours." Riker didn't blink. "Status of the Vindicator?" "Final refit in 6 hours. Requiem modules are en route from Luna." Riker turned, boots echoing off the steel gantry. "Prep her for black space. Burn. Full loadout. No escort drills. We go as wolves." "Yes, Captain." He paused, staring out across the void at the growing hull of humanity's newest dreadnought. The Vindicator, a ship not made for defense, diplomacy, or deterrence. It was a vessel of vengeance. Elsewhere, news of the mobilization spread like a pulse through the soul of humanity. On the orbital station Minerva Prime, young cadets watched silent footage of Enoch's remains, fists clenched. Across the asteroid mines of Vesta, work crews volunteered en masse to reinforce hulls with near-indestructible core stone. On Earth, a 12-year-old girl lit a candle for her sister, lost on Enoch, and posted her pledge across every network. "I'll fight. I'll learn. I'll never forget. Make me a soldier." Within hours, it had 10 million shares. By morning, it had become the face of Earth's fury. Back on Mars, Riker met with the Terran Assembly's military council via holo. The room flickered with ghosts, commanders from Jupiter, Venus, Titan, Earth. "They hit us without warning," Riker said. "They didn't come to rule. They came to end us." "Do we know for sure it was the Jar call?" someone asked. "Does it matter?" Riker snapped. "They struck us. Now we show them what they woke up." "And if we fail?" Riker stared through the feed, voice a quiet storm. "Then we make them remember us in their nightmares." In a dry dock orbiting Ganymede, the Vindicator's engines rumbled to life. Turrets rotated, shields calibrated, the ship's AI flickered, online with a pulse of red. And aboard, tens of thousands of crew members strapped in for the black space jump, eyes forward, blood humming. The Valkyrie strike group was ready. Humanity had bled. Now it would burn, and the stars would soon learn. You, do not strike a Terran colony and walk away. Ganymede was silent beneath its crust of ancient ice. That silence broke the moment the dig team cracked the final shell of permafrost and revealed the shape buried deep beneath. A spire, jagged and dark, pulsing with a soft, unnatural blue glow. It hadn't been built. It had been grown, its edges smoother than carbon, its root-like base spiraling deep into the moon's core like veins. Dr. Elise Nairo stood at the edge of the shaft, staring down into the impossible. "You said this wasn't supposed to be here," said her assistant, whispering like sound itself might wake something. Nairo nodded once, jaw tense. "It wasn't. We scanned this site 10 years ago. It was dead then. But now, It's awake. 6 hours later, an emergency call reached the Valkyrie strike group en route to the Kuiper Belt. Riker Hales didn't waste time. Vindicator made the jump instantly, piercing black space and dropping into Ganymede orbit with a thunderclap of displaced gravity. Marines deployed within the hour, led by Sergeant Camria Voss, grizzled, sharp-eyed, with a cybernetic spine and the unshakable presence of someone who'd fought through hell and walked out harder. Her boots hit the frost-slick surface with a hiss. "This better not be a damn ice ghost story," she muttered, rifle drawn. Dr. Nairo met her at the dig entrance, pale and frantic. "It's not just a spire," she said, thrusting a datapad forward. "It's a beacon. A psychic one." Voss frowned. "What?" "It's broadcasting a neural signature, not a signal, a thought." And then came the whisper. "We see you." Voss's HUD flashed red. Her comms flooded with static. One of her Marines dropped to his knees, screaming and clawing at his helmet. Blood leaked from his nose. Another raised his weapon at nothing, then turned it on himself. The squad barely had time to react when the Guardian emerged. It didn't walk. It floated, 12 feet tall, skin like obsidian glass. No mouth, no eyes, just a lattice of light pulsing through its chest like a living circuit. The air around it distorted like heat haze, and the temperature dropped 15 degrees in seconds. It didn't attack immediately. It watched. Voss ordered her team into a perimeter. One soldier tried to flank. The Guardian twisted its hand, and he vanished. No sound, no scream, just gone. "Do not engage," Voss shouted. But the Guardian didn't care about bullets. It cared about minds. Suddenly, everyone heard it. "You are named. You are marked. The cycle begins anew." It took a full requiem interference pulse from Vindicator to freeze the creature mid-action. Ganymede's surface cracked beneath the strain. The Guardian collapsed in a tangled heap of twitching limbs, and Blue Static, still alive, but barely. They dragged it back to the ship in a stasis field, every soldier flinching at the slightest flicker. Back aboard Vindicator, Nairo analyzed it while Riker and Voss stared at the scans in disbelief. Inside the Guardian's neural core was a list. Long, scrolling, written in encoded thought logic. The first names on the list were Enoch's colony leaders. The last? Riker Hales, Camria Voss, Elise Nairo. Humanity wasn't being attacked randomly. It was being cataloged, hunted, chosen. That night, Riker stood in the dark of the observation deck, watching Ganymede spin slowly beneath them. The war had changed again. It wasn't just military, it wasn't just psychic, it was personal. "What does it mean?" Voss asked behind him. He didn't answer for a long time. Then, "It means we're not just fighting for survival." He turned. "We're fighting to stay human." The Guardian never screamed, but it resonated. Every time its body convulsed in the stasis chamber aboard Vindicator, every time its neural lattice lit with ghost blue pulses, everyone nearby felt it, not in sound, but in emotion. Dread, isolation. A silence so vast it drowned the soul. Dr. Elise Nairo had studied it for 72 straight hours. No sleep, no comfort. Just her, the AI assistant Farah, and a creature that didn't breathe, didn't eat, and yet pulsed with a kind of ancient memory, like it had seen galaxies rise and fall and never once flinched. "Farah, start again," she whispered. "Amplify the echo feed from the Guardian's mind. Isolate any new sequences." "Warning," Farah replied. "Emotional contamination threshold at 89%. Prolonged exposure risks neural feedback. Do it anyway." The feed surged. Her vision blurred. She wasn't in the lab anymore. She stood on a dead world, ash skies choked with ruin, towers of bone and steel stretching into a bruised twilight. Across the wastes moved them, thousands of Jarkal, bodies faceless, lightless, marching not out of anger but obligation. A voice, not a voice, pressed into her skull. We were not born. We were selected, shaped, hollowed, purpose without, self. Then, you are flawed. You feel. That is your weakness. She fell to her knees as the vision broke. On the bridge, Riker Hales watched the data logs scroll across the screen. "What do you see, Captain?" asked Admiral Gian over the secure link. "Not soldiers," Riker replied, jaw tight. "Slaves." "Explain." He turned the camera toward the Guardian, suspended like a broken angel inside a containment shell. "The Jarkal aren't just attacking us. They're erasing us, stripping us down to base functions. No emotion, no memory, no soul. They're trying to remake us in their image." He leaned in. "But what if the one thing they fear is the one thing we feel?" In Luna's deep psych labs, Nairo's theory found traction. What if emotion wasn't a vulnerability? What if it could be used like code? Project Mirror began immediately. Engineers and empaths collaborated. Neural linguists built emotional frequency weapons, resonant empathy bombs, capable of injecting intense emotion directly into Jarkal. Hive thought. The prototype? Siren 1, not a gun, not a missile, a song. The test site was an asteroid base abandoned during the Venusian trade collapse. A captured Jarkal scout, smaller than the Guardian but still monstrous, was placed inside. The resonance chamber, Siren 1 activated and played laughter. Not random noise, human laughter. Children giggling, soldiers sharing a joke, a grandmother humming while baking, a father's joyous shout at his newborn's first step. The Jarkal twitched, then screamed. It clawed at the walls, not in rage, in fear. Its lattice cracked under. The emotional overload, exposed to something its creators had long purged: connection. The message was clear. Empathy wasn't weakness. It was poison to them. Back aboard Vindicator, Riker watched the playback on loop. He didn't smile. "Deploy mirror tech to every ship, every drone, every satellite." "Sir?" Voss blinked. "You want us to fight with feelings?" "No," Riker said, eyes burning. "I want them to feel what they've tried to forget." As Vindicator powered toward the Jarkal fringe zone, its hull shimmered with an eerie pulse. Not just weapons, but music. The ship carried the sound of humanity, rage and sorrow, joy and memory, love and grief. A warship armed with everything the enemy couldn't understand. Because in a universe where cold logic ruled the stars, the one thing more terrifying than power was compassion. The edge of Jarkal space was a scar across the stars. No patrol routes, no beacon lights, just a stretch of dead systems where even radiation refused to hum. They called it the Fringe, but to the Terran fleet surging toward it, it felt like the throat of a sleeping god. Vindicator emerged from black space with a crack like a splitting world. 37 ships followed. Frigates, carriers, drone hives, all bristling with kinetic weaponry and mirror arrays that pulsed like a heartbeat. Captain Riker Hales stood at the command dais, hands clasped behind his back. "What are we seeing?" The tactical officer adjusted the display. "System GLX 3111, one planetary body, artificial orbital lattice, no atmosphere, no signals." "The Jarkal don't need air," Riker muttered. "They need control." The planet wasn't a planet. It was a forge, a sphere of obsidian and bone, layered with hive structures spiraling into the crust like veins. Docked to it were harvest barges, each the size of a Terran city, draining the core of its minerals, likely to feed more Guardians. The Jarkal didn't build for life. They built for conquest. Riker gave the order. Strike. The battle began. In silence, Terran ships descended in tight phalanxes, guided by quantum AI. Drones deployed in shimmering waves, their wings humming with mirror pulses. Railguns opened fire, sending slugs the size of trucks into the orbital lattice. Jarkal vessels rose like insects from nests, their surfaces rippling with nanite armor. They didn't fire lasers. They cut. Light itself warped around them as they sliced through space, weapons more akin to dimensional razors than energy beams. But for the first time, they hesitated. Mirror was live, and the sky was filled with human memory. A father singing to his son before war, a soldier screaming as she watched her unit die, a child laughing through tears, clutching a stuffed bear on evacuation day. Each pulse struck the enemy like a hammer of sorrow and hope. Feelings the Jarkal could neither process nor endure. Ships veered off course. Coordinated attacks collapsed. Their formations twisted into chaos. "Mirror is destabilizing their hive logic," shouted the comms officer. "They're panicking." "They're feeling," Riker said coldly. "Push through." On the Forge world's surface, Sergeant Camria Voss led the breach. Her boots slammed onto the hive carapace floor, rifle raised, visor pinging heat signatures through walls of sinew and metal. Behind her, mech suits pounded the ground, flamers lit, ready to burn everything that moved. "Move fast," she growled. "No mercy, no survivors. This is for Enoch." Then the ground opened. A guardian, twice the size of the first, rose from the floor in pieces, limbs detaching, reforming, twisting into new shapes. It screamed, not with a voice, but with gravity. A localized quake that shattered helmets and crushed air from lungs. But it didn't account for empathy. Voss activated her mirror implant and screamed back. Her memory hit it like a bomb. A baby, torn from her arms during the Jupiter uprising, a child she never saw again. Her soul flayed raw for a heartbeat. The Guardian reeled, its body spasmed. It collapsed. They shot it before it could rise. When the dust settled, the forge was burning. Terran. Flags were planted in melted hive halls. Drones scoured the husks. Black boxes recovered Jarkal memory sequences, broken, corrupted, screaming. They had been gods. Now they were prey. Back aboard Vindicator, Riker watched the wreckage spin across space. "First colony down," Voss said, stepping beside him. He didn't smile. "Then we keep going." She glanced at the stars. "How far?" Riker's eyes burned. All the way to their origin. Because now the message was clear. Humanity remembers pain, but it also remembers who caused it. In the void beyond the fringe, there are no star charts. There are only ghost trails, faint radiation wakes, psychic scars in dark matter, fragments of forgotten languages etched into the black. But to Vindicator, they were road signs. To Riker, Hales, they were breadcrumbs leading home. Only it wasn't his home he was hunting for, it was theirs. "This is a warpath," Voss said, eyes narrowed at the tactical holomap. "We're not scouting anymore." "No," Riker said, calm and cold. "We're delivering." "Delivering what?" "Memory, fire, and a message." He tapped the map. The Jarkal struck first. Now we erase them, system by system, the IA. Next target was Kellyan 7, a dead gas giant ringed by an artificial moon, Jarkal built, made of obsidian alloy that defied scans and reflected no light. But when Terran scouts pierced its shell, they found what no one expected: a library. Rows of psychogenic spires, humming with thought storage. A catalog of species harvested, conquered, silenced. Humanity's file had already been started. Thousands of memories, ripped from Enoch survivors, played endlessly inside. Riker watched one, a mother, eyes hollow, whispering her name before her. Mind snapped. "Shut it down," he growled. Instead, they wired in mirror. Let it pulse back. Let them remember what they had stolen, what they had broken. Then they torched the moon. From orbit, the flames looked like an eye, open, furious. "Transmit this to all Jarkal frequencies," Riker ordered. The message went out, simple and final. "Your silence ends here. We are coming." The next 5 days were war. Pure, merciless, precise. Humanity's fleet moved like a spearhead across the unknown. They hit a harvesting station in the Varn Nebula, releasing enslaved minds from neural prisons and infecting the core with songs from Earth. They decimated a psychic relay in the Umbra Belt, turning its pulse beacon into a scream of laughter and rebellion. Every victory left a trail. Shattered hulls, black glass towers melted to slag, and the same words scorched into the wreckage in 1,000 languages. Remember Enoch. The galaxy was starting to listen, but Jarkal do not run, they adapt. In the ruins of the Feral Hollow, the Terrans encountered something new. An Echoborn. It walked like a guardian but moved like shadow, reflected forms, shifting faces, voices stolen from Terran transmissions. When it spoke, it used Riker's voice. You are anger. You are memory. You are weak. They tried mirror. It laughed. And then it countered, projecting artificial empathy back into the Terrans, twisting it, warping it. Soldiers collapsed, overwhelmed with false grief, manipulated guilt. One Marine shot himself, whispering, I'm sorry, to no one. Shut it down. Voss screamed. Too late. The Echoborn turned and vanished, dissolving into smoke, leaving behind only static and a single psychic imprint. You learn. So do we. Back aboard Vindicator, Riker stood alone in his quarters. His hands trembled slightly. They're mimicking us, he murmured, learning what makes us human, then turning it into poison. Farah's voice chimed quietly. Then we must redefine what it means to be human. Riker looked out at the stars. No, he said. We don't redefine it. He turned, voice sharpening. We sharpen it, until it cuts deeper than they can stand. The next offensive was already planned. Earth wasn't just striking back. It was shaping the war, and humanity had just learned the one thing the Jarkal couldn't predict. We don't fight to win. We fight to remember, and we don't stop. The stars over the Jarkal homeworld were not stars. They were warships, Terran dreadnoughts, drone swarms, and mirror-enabled pulse frigates formed a blade across the heavens, hundreds strong, each one humming with the memories of Earth, with rage encoded into sound and light. A choir of vengeance. From orbit, the Jarkal world didn't look like a planet. It was a black wound in space, its crust stitched with architecture older than recorded time. Towering monoliths of fused bone, machinery that breathed, a singular spire reaching into the void like it wanted to stab the gods themselves. Inside that spire, they believed, was the prime echo, the source of the Jarkal hive thought. Kill it, and the war ends, or the universe breaks. All ships initiate operation. Duskfall, Riker ordered, voice broadcast across the entire fleet. Begin the final descent. The Terran ships lit up like falling suns. Mirror arrays flared to life, blasting waves of emotional resonance across the void. Joy, sorrow, fury, hope. Every ship carried a different memory. Soldiers recorded their last thoughts. Civilians on Earth whispered their fears. Children sang lullabies as Mirror turned them into weapons. The Jarkal responded in silence. Then they came. Massive, multi-limbed war forms rose from the atmosphere, cloaked in dark plasma. They didn't move like ships. They moved like thoughts given shape. One blinked out of sight, only to reappear behind a Terran cruiser and tear it in half with a pulse of negative gravity. But they hesitated. Mirror struck again, this time amplified by the Oblivion Array, a new network of deep emotion resonators, wired through the fleet, and the sky wept, rain of light, screams, laughs, prayers, birth, death. 1,000 lifetimes spilled across the stars. The Jarkal flinched. Some vessels collapsed in on themselves, crippled by the surge. Others turned. On each other. Confused. Infected by feelings they couldn't process. They're breaking ranks, Voss shouted from the surface insertion ship. "They're remembering," Riker replied, eyes burning. "And they don't know how to stop." The surface war was worse. The team dropped near the prime spire, black storms overhead, magnetic lightning, arcing through clouds like the sky was trying to tear itself apart. The ground squirmed with biomechanical tendrils that reached for them, screaming in alien voices stolen from mirror transmissions. But Voss led the charge anyway. Behind her, Terran mechs stormed forward, flamethrowers and pulse cannons clearing the path. They weren't just killing, they were broadcasting. Every footfall thumped with the sounds of home. Every kill pulse carried a memory, a mother whispering a bedtime story, a brother hugging his twin before conscription. The sound of a storm on Earth's coast. The Jar Call crumbled. Inside the spire, Riker and Nairo descended. The walls moved with them, etched with faces, some alien, some unmistakably human. They pulsed in rhythm with the approaching pair. At the base, the prime echo, a sphere of mirrored thought floating, alive. A million voices screamed from it, some Jarkal, many stolen from Earth. It wasn't just a mind, it was a collection of souls. "We can't destroy it," Nairo whispered, eyes wide. "We are inside it. They've copied us. All of us." "Then let's give them something they can't control." She activated the final mirror protocol. Operation. Inheritance. They uploaded everything. Love, rage, terror, forgiveness, memories. Of family. Of betrayal. Of Earth's last sunrise before the attack. The prime echo pulsed, then screamed. It turned white-hot. "Run!" Riker shouted, grabbing Nairo. Behind them, the world came undone. From orbit, the prime spire cracked like glass, then exploded. A shockwave surged through Jarkal space. Ships fell. Hive thought collapsed. The collective mind shattered, turned. Inward by emotions they never evolved to endure. For the first time in their history, the Jarkal went silent. The stars above Jarkal's shattered homeworld no longer flickered with the same life. They were still there, those cold, distant points of light. But now they felt empty, stilled. The remnants of the Terran fleet floated in orbit, silent witnesses, to the end of a war that should never have begun. Yet even in the quiet, they carried the memories of the battle, the sacrifice, the final surge of humanity's wrath and hope. Captain Riker Hales stood alone on the observation deck of Vindicator, staring at the wreckage below. 1,000 ships had fallen in their wake. 1,000 Jarkal minds had burned themselves out, overwhelmed by something they had never understood, and the galaxy, the universe itself, had watched. "Sir?" Voss approached, her face unmarked by the battle, but her eyes heavy with something more. "We've completed the survey. The Echo's dead. The Hive is gone. Jarkal warships are in disarray." "And the rest?" Riker asked, voice low, his gaze still fixed on the drifting wreckage. "They're leaving. Not just us. The galaxy. All of it." Voss paused, her voice tight. "There's nothing left for them. The Jarkal are scattered. Silent." Riker's jaw clenched. "We didn't just break them. We erased them. Not just from this world, but from every world they've touched." He turned slowly, eyes searching the expanse of space. "I told you once, Voss, this war was never about us surviving." Her eyes narrowed, understanding dawning. It was about remembering. Below, on the surface of what was once the Jarkal capital world, the Terran soldiers were already packing. Up! The wreckage of their final battle would become a monument, a graveyard, and a warning. And as they moved, as they began the long process of restoring what they could to the broken land, a new transmission came in. From Earth. The entire fleet watched. As the feed played, a voice, but not Riker's or Voss's, a voice human and ancient. To the survivors of Enoch and those who followed, you have done what we could not. The galaxy will never forget the lessons you have carved into its bones. It was a hollow victory. The Jarkal had lost. Yes, but in the process, they had awakened something. Something new. Humanity had shown that it would not be silenced. That, even in the darkest hours when memory was all that remained, humanity would fight for what it had lost. The crew of Vindicator could not forget the faces of the dead. They couldn't forget the innocents lost, the lives shattered in those few tragic moments of terror. But they could remember. And that was what made them different. That was the reason they survived. On the observation deck, Riker's hand hovered over the controls. He wasn't sure what came next. He wasn't sure there was a next, but he knew one thing. They had reminded the stars of who they were. And for the first time, the Jarkal would be forced to understand the cost of their silence. The war was over. The galaxy was still here. All ships, Riker finally said, his voice steady. Prepare to leave the system. We've learned what we needed. Voss nodded beside him. And what's that, Captain? Riker's gaze turned back to the stars, his eyes dark and thoughtful. That even the void remembers. And if the stars remember us, he trailed off, his voice nearly a whisper, then they'll never forget again. The fleet moved slowly, like an ancient ship bearing the weight of time itself. And in the long silence, one thing became clear. The war had taken its toll. Yes. But it had also revealed the strength buried within humanity. The strength that was forged in memory, in loss, and in the refusal to let their voices be swallowed by the dark. In the stars above, the echoes of Earth's spirit hummed quietly, steadily, and in the deep, unseen spaces between worlds, the Jarkal felt it, the thing they could not conquer, the thing that would keep them from ever returning, the human will to be remembered. And with that, humanity began to chart its future, armed with a lesson that would echo through the void for millennia. The war was over, but the story was only beginning.